we need to take time looking outside of ourselves, seeking the stories that give us a sense of perspective. And I like to use this phrase called compared to what. So I'll say like, oh, I'm really tired, but compared to what? Or there's a lot that I'm going through right now, but compared to what? And those stories inspire me. They empower me. It doesn't dismiss my challenges. It really just puts them into perspective where I can keep moving forward.
Welcome to Engage Presents. I'm Engage co-founder and president Jake Olson. In this interview series, I ask Engage talent the most common questions we hear from event planners to help you get to know them and their stories in 15 minutes or less. Thanks for listening. Welcome to another episode of Engage Presents. I am Engage president Jake Olson. Alongside me today, Rob Paylor. Rob, you are a Cal Bear, alumni of Cal Berkeley up there. Which I will overlook. It's easy for me to do that sometimes. But you are a motivational speaker, bring a lot of inspiration to a lot of people. Your story is tremendous, quadriplegic, but on a journey to be walking again. And I will even say you will be walking again, knowing who you are and your mindset. So before we get into that, though, the first thing I know I said I'd overlook it, but I'm not going to. I guess we're somewhat rivals still, but what's your kind of whole your thoughts on this, I guess, change in conference, the conference realignment is the word I'm looking for. You guys are on the other side of the country in a conference that is while you're still on the West Coast.
Yeah, well, thank you so much for having me on, Jake. And we're immediately getting to the most hard-hitting questions here. So I
Yes.
love it, but
Start off hot.
appreciate you not holding it over me too bad. I think the one thing that we can be more than united on is our shared disdain for schools like UCLA and Stanford. So there's a lot that brings us together still, but it's just crazy time in college sports. I just unbelievable. Can't imagine being an athlete right now, traveling across the country for all of our games, but through all this, it's still just a great collegiate experience for all the guys and continue to keep in touch with all of them. Sounds like things are going well for them. But if you would ask me a few years ago that this would be happening, I'd say you're absolutely crazy. But here we are.
Rob, you immediately are going. You're trying to relate to me by using the whole "your enemy of your enemy is your friend" technique.
That's right.
I like it. I like it. But you kind of mentioned it briefly there. But tell us, for those who don't know, kind of briefly tell us your story and just kind of how you ended up being a quadriplegic, and then kind of we
Mhm.
can get on from the mindset from there.
Totally, totally. My story really originates as an athlete. Just all my earliest memories are playing basketball, playing baseball, playing football, and I absolutely loved it. I mean, it's the thing that got me up out of bed in the morning. It's the thing that drove me. And then in high school, I find the sport of rugby. And I didn't have a clue what rugby was before I came into high school, but the high school that I went to, Jesuit High School in Sacramento, really successful rugby program. Number one, number two in the nation. If we're two or three in the nation, it's a bad year for us. So really high standard of success and find myself in this position where I was really attracted to the sport. A lot of my friends played. They said, Robert, you would love this game. You'd be really good at it. I had a knack for contact. And of course, everybody knows rugby is one of the biggest contact sports out there.
Yes.
I decided to give it a shot and I loved it. I got MVP my first year playing. Our varsity team won a national championship that year. The next 2 years of me playing my junior and senior year, we were runner up in the nation. Then I eventually get my shoulder tapped to go play over at UC Berkeley, which is the number one rugby program in the nation. At the time, I was being recruited. Oh, I believe that the program had 29 national championships, with the tournament only being around for about 45 years. So you can look at any sports team at any level in the country, and I think the only team that has more championships than us is the Harlem Globetrotters, and their games are rigged. So we're doing all right, and I'm so excited to be in this sport. I eventually earned a starting spot on the team, and we're competing for a national championship in our sophomore year. And it was in this game that I'm competing in a mall, which is like when the bigger guys, we group up in a single unit, we start pushing to advance the ball. And it was really my moment to shine. Like I'm a big guy. I'm on this field to move people that don't want to move. And we're just 5 meters out. And I'm thinking, I want to drive this thing in. We get the first score, and we're really rolling towards our now 31st national championship. And as I'm doing that, these opposing players just start making illegal moves, and the referee's not calling it. So Three players came in from the side, which are all infractions in rugby. And then their number eight binds me in a headlock. So he's kind of got my chin pinned down to my chest. And in rugby, this is an automatic yellow or red card, but the ref's not calling it. And I decide I'm just going to keep moving forward. I'm going to plow through this. Dirty things happen a lot in rugby, and I'm not going to let this stop me. And then another player chops me down by my legs. So I start falling down. And this player really continues to improve his bind around my neck. I can't get my head up. And I remember I just closed my eyes, I grit my teeth. I felt this god awful crunch in my neck, and it
Hmm.
was just poof. Can't feel anything, can't move anything, totally clear and conscious in my head as much as I am right now, but I'm completely numb and emotionless from about my collarbone down, and my thoughts are just running wild. Like, am I ever going to be able to go back to school? Am I going to graduate? Could I ever like meet a girl and get married and start a family? Am I ever going to be able to feed myself? Like in this moment, I could barely even breathe. I eventually get over to the hospital where my doctor says, Robert, what happened to you is terrible, and you're never going to walk again. You're never going to move your hands. And we're going to do our best. So one day you can do something like pick up a piece of pizza and bring it to your face. I mean, I was absolutely crushed in that moment. And there wasn't a lot of choices that I had, but I knew I just had to give everything I can give to get everything I can get out of this recovery. And I had to overcome pneumonia. I couldn't swallow anything. I lost 60 pounds in that first month to where I eventually got transported to a hospital in Colorado, which changed the entire trajectory of my life. And I went in there unable to move anything below my neck to where I could then twitch a finger and twitch a toe. And a year later, I walked out of that hospital and I went back to UC Berkeley and I got my degree from the number one public university in the world. And again, sorry for the UCLA fans out there. We can kind of discuss the number one rankings later, but did all this while continuing my rehab to where I can now stand up out of my wheelchair and my walker on my own and I can walk up to 400 yards. So this journey's been long and it's difficult and it's not over yet. But in this journey, I've learned so many things to help me overcome adversities that I'm taking throughout the rest of my life and have found just my greatest gift in being able to share those tools with others. And that's what gets us here today on just the most wonderful pursuit I've ever had in my life.
Well, I mean, there's not much to be said after that, Rob. I mean, I commend you for who you are and your just attitude in life. Thank you for sharing that. I know, obviously, when I share my story, similarly, people kind of say the same thing, and I think they're kind of a little bit awestruck at just the immensity of the difficulty and the adversity that you've overcome, and they kind of then try to apply it to their own life. And
Mhm.
obviously, their problems seem so small compared to what you've gone through. And I know at certain times people kind of lose that relatability at that point. But when we do speak about overcoming adversity or overcoming challenges, getting up out of bed in the morning, just kind of moving forward, everyone has to do that in their own way. And so
Mhm.
you kind of said at the end there how you are able to share the tools you've learned through your experience of overcoming adversity and help others. So kind of if you are talking to someone right now who is lacking motivation, who's going through something tough and they're finding it difficult to take those steps forward because of what they're going through, can you give them just a little piece of advice or just something you've learned in your experience so that they can also continue to walk forward in life?
Totally, totally. I think the number one thing is don't ignore the challenge that's going on.
Mm.
I met a lot of people in the beginning of my injury who were saying, I'm not a quadriplegic. This just isn't who I am. And I'm going to walk out of these doors in a month. You don't even need to try. And they just weren't realistic with where they were. And because of it, didn't put in the effort that was really necessary to just have that chance to overcome. And I think that's really just a critical first step is just be really open and okay with having challenges. Every single person in this world has a challenge. Mine are very visible, but everybody's dealing with something. And I would say that's like step number one is really just realize that you have something to take on. And number two, one of the biggest things I try to deliver to folks is perspective. And perspective, can kind of be used both ways. It can be used wrong too. And sometimes, like kind of like you were hinting at, we can look at someone who has, just an immense challenge and think like, what am I complaining about? and just kind of ignore that challenge in my life that's going on because it must just be a problem that's going on with me. I'm just not strong enough. I just don't have enough fortitude. And if we do that, we're never going to overcome those adversities in our lives. We need to take time looking outside of ourselves, seeking the stories that give us a sense of perspective. And I like to use this phrase called compared to what. So I'll say like, oh, I'm really tired, but compared to what? Or there's a lot that I'm going through right now, but compared to what? And those stories inspire me. They empower me. It doesn't dismiss my challenges. It really just puts them into perspective where I can keep moving forward. So if somebody has something going on in their life, and it can be career related, it can be in their personal life, to first identify that issue that's going on, really start to look outside for themselves, and then use those stories to help them put their challenges into perspective so they can move forward and pursue positivity through each day.
It's amazing advice. Amazing advice. And kind of speaking of perspective, now that you're obviously on this side of everything, the perspective look at your life in or with what are some things that you see in yourself or see that have come about in life because of what you went through that you're really proud of, or just something that you wouldn't trade for the world if it came to it?
Yeah, it's purpose, it's meaning in my life.
Mm.
And before I got hurt, my purpose and meaning was derived in athletics. It was through being the best rugby player I could possibly be. Like I said, that's what got me up out of bed in the morning. That's what kept me moving forward. And then in one moment, because of something I absolutely had no control over, it was gone. And I'm an optimistic guy, but I always knew I was never playing rugby again. That's just not something that was coming back. I needed to find new purpose and meaning. And I really found it through speaking, through sharing the story, taking what everyone would think would be the worst thing that could ever happen to me and turn it into a gift. And it's a gift that I can share with other people. And I remember when I gave my first speech, it was just over in the High School of Business over at Cal. There was a professor who is one of just my best friends today and was trying to plant these seeds for me to start sharing this story. And I remember going in there, and it's kind of like I'm sort of reading off the paper, and it's like a
Yeah.
fourth of the time that I speak now. But the audience reaction was just amazing. They're laughing, they're crying. It's a standing ovation. People are just pouring out their hearts one on one after this presentation. I go back to my dorm room and I'm like, this is it. This is that purpose. Like this is just overflowing out of the hole that was left when I couldn't play rugby anymore. And it was so obvious. It was like, I'm going to dedicate the rest of my life to this, and I wouldn't even trade it for anything in the world.
So with that, I know you said kind of people pour out your heart to you after they speak, and you have those experiences, but kind of beyond that, down to the nitty gritty of you coming and talking, just give us a little brief, example, or kind of explain how or what it's like to work with Rob when an event planner does come in and book you for a speech.
Absolutely. Yeah, I try to make it as easy, simple as possible. Engage has just been the perfect partner for making this happen through actually connecting speakers with the end client. So there isn't like any of the middleman thing where communication can get lost and stuff. It's awesome to be able to work directly with the client. So, I mean, it's an overabundance of communication, right? And making sure that everything's where it needs to be, with who it needs to be with, on time, before it needs to be there. So I mean, that's just number one. Unlimited prep calls for whatever is needed. Just getting AV stuff set up, accessibility needs, and then really just curating that message to the audience. This isn't just some copy and paste message that I want to deliver. It's really diving deep into what are the challenges of this organization and the individuals within it. What are the goals of this organization and the individuals within it? And how can I be a part in making those challenges be overcome and those goals be achieved? So I want to spend a lot of time talking about that and how I can curate this message most to this specific audience. And then from there, on the day of the event, the thing with me is I'm not trying to get in there, give my hour-long speech and get out. I want to be a part of anything I can. So if that's dinner with leadership the night before, cocktail hours after the speech, and networking, stuff like that, those are some of the most enriching experiences of this entire thing.
Well, Rob, we can tell it's your purpose in life. We can tell how authentic you are. And just from the feedback we've received, we can tell how great you are as a presenter, as a speaker. And again, we just thank you for letting us be part of your journey in this way to giving you that opportunity to change lives, because that's what you're doing. So thank you, Rob, for joining us today. I will say under my breath, go Bears. Um, I do, again, really appreciate your time today. If you want to learn more about Rob's story, please visit letsengage.com. You can find his profile there and book him to speak. I promise you will not regret it. If there's one thing you've learned from this interview, I hope it's just that no matter what happens in life, you can continue to move forward. Rob, you are a great example of that and continue to walk forward in life. So thank you again for sharing your story today.
Thank you, Jake. Go Bears and fight on.
All right, there you go. I love it back. All right. Thank you for watching this episode of Engage Presents. Please join us next time.